I know that I'm not the only one who's been temporarily struck silent by the war in Ukraine. My job, if you can call it a job, is to weigh in on human events. But it's one thing to analyze what's happening here in California or even in the U.S., and a very different thing to give an opinion about a war of aggression between two countries I've never visited. I've spent the last 2 weeks immersed in news and speculation, historical context, even cultural commentary, from a wide range of experts, all of whom see Putin's invasion through the lens of their own field of study. If I've done anything well here on BCL, it's been to accurately take the pulse of my fellow human beings. So let me just humbly throw out a couple of notions here for all of you to consider however you might. Many times in the last 2 weeks, I've heard somebody say that the invasion of Ukraine is the first conventional war in Europe for decades. After hearing that a few times, another thought began to form in my mind. It goes like this. Putin's war is the last conventional war in Europe. I'll explain. Humans are the most social of all the social primates. Ideas spread through small groups and then through ever larger groups. Eventually, some of them reach a kind of critical mass, and a previously accepted truth evaporates into thin air. That some men will be kings and others will be slaves. That we'd always be at the mercy of disease and disaster. That it's just fine to whip a child with a leather belt. That it's cool to smoke cigarettes on a plane or in a hospital. I could name a dozen common assumptions that have died away just in the course of my own life. I think another is dying beneath the tracks of Putin's tanks. The assumption of war. War of the type that requires a massive industrial and bureaucratic effort. And society-wide agreement. I think that right now we are watching as big machine war becomes obsolete. COVID-19 forced the world to confront a shared threat that we knew little about. The collateral damage shows how deeply interdependent we've become. In an attempt to stop the virus, our governments hobbled the supply chain. Most of us had little idea of how complex a mechanism there is behind even the most casual purchase made at the neighborhood market. But now we know, don't we? We might be strongly American or Brazilian or Japanese, but now there is no denying that nations need one another. If only because the world's merchants need to trade with each other in order to keep our needs met. That we've been as free of war as we have been for the last few decades isn't luck. It's a result of our growing financial interdependence. War threatens the stability of that, so we gave it up. But just as we were watching the pandemic fade, we've been forced to watch one nation invading another. This to satisfy one man's paranoid fear of a treaty organization that wouldn't even exist if not for his own country's past aggressions. The invasion hit us like a gut punch all over the world. Why? Because something has shifted. As a species, we've changed our minds through processes having nothing to do with politics. A ground war with infantry requires some degree of dehumanization. It's hard to pull that off these days. I'd say that TikTok alone has dissolved such prejudice better than any philosopher ever could. How can you hate across borders when everybody seems so silly, so eager to make each other smile? It's time that we acknowledged what Putin's bloody fiasco is telling us. All wars are illegitimate. Every time a group of humans dons one uniform to run and kill those in another, it's because their so-called leaders have failed them miserably. The job of a leader is to protect his or her people. That gets turned around and the people think it's their job to protect the leaders. They end up torn apart by bullets and shrapnel while the man who sent them to die is safe behind his palace walls. How primitive can you get? There's a lot of static in the signal coming out of the conflict zone at this moment, but one thing seems clear. Conventional war has gone out of style. My gut tells me that Vladimir Putin's political career is ending. Even if he wins this war, he'll lose the absolute power he thinks he's earned. It might be that China will step in and make Putin an offer he can't refuse. This would make Xi Jinping the winner. Would that send him off to grab Taiwan? Just the opposite, I think. He plays better chess than that. What is the Belt and Road except the building of alliances? with the advantage always leaning back toward Beijing. Look, President Biden has been very clear. For NATO nations like us, this will be a war of economic pressure. The harder we put the screws to Russia, the harder we'll be hitting the wallet. There isn't a gallon of gas to be had in Los Angeles for less than $5. This will force inflation higher across the board. And with 30% of the world's wheat supplied by the two countries in question and 20% of its corn, expect food prices to soar. This will cause more privation in countries already reeling from the shutdowns. Our pain over the coming months is what we will contribute to this effort in lieu of soldiers. That's how conflicts will look going forward. War, as we've known it, is the sharpened edge of an outmoded way of thinking about power. The superstitious belief that human well-being is granted downward at the whim of powerful men, to be paid for occasionally with the lives of our young. Everybody around the world seems shocked by Putin's war of ego. I see that shock as the silver lining in this otherwise ugly picture. Proof that humanity has begun to expect better of itself. Thanks for watching. If you like this video, subscribe to our channel and then click the little bell to get notifications.